Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and from my count, the fourth installment of the Big Tire Supra build series. So as you can see, I've successfully converted the Supra into a Corvette, and that is for a good reason. As what we are working on today is the titanium exhaust for this car. So the reason that the hood, or I guess the front end, is in the position that it is, or frankly on the car at all at this point in time, is because I need to run this exhaust through the pre-existing hole in this front end. In order to do so, obviously the front end needs to be on the car, so I'm not just guessing as to where I'm running the tube to. And what I've done is kind of rig the front of this so it can pivot up, as I'm just working here by myself, and this front end is a two-person job to get on and off typically. So we did some old redneck engineering and have a piece of wood, a couple of bolts down there holding everything together, and most importantly, I have the first little section of this exhaust tacked together. So I'm now going to weld this section up, and then I can continue making my way up through the hood and do exactly what Don wanted me to do. So we're using Ticon materials, as always with any titanium project around here, and we have a little section of straight tubing and then a couple of cut up mandrel elbows, as well as one of their Pro Mod turbine outlet flanges. And I had to do some little bit of trickery and jiggery pokery to get this all to fit in here, as my clearance to primary number 3 was not very much. But I'm not sure if you guys can see, there's probably about an 1/8 inch of clearance between the downpipe, or the hood exit, the exhaust rather, and that number 3 primary. So I think that should be good. We have clearance to the strut tower, and I'm happy with the way that everything is shaping up. So let me pull this piece off of the car. We can go in the welding room and get this section welded together, so any movement or distortion or anything is already accounted for as I continue to make my way up through the front end with this exhaust. So with the tube section out of the car, I'm all set up with my initial start-stop points. If you guys can see the permanent marker mark next to my thumb there. Another one on that joint, and then on the flange weld. And I also have this end capped for back purging. So, in talking about back purging, I'm sure you guys have heard of TIG aesthetics, and if you haven't, then I don't know what rock you've been living under. But jokes aside, TIG aesthetics is a joint venture between the Stainless Bros and Ticon crew and my good friend Brad. And they being Ticon and Stainless Bros, help Brad bring these awesome purge plugs to fruition. So the purpose of these, this would be the feed side plug with a nice little diffuser screen in it. And then there are also vent plugs that have just a tube stub that stick out. And the purpose of these is to make the back purging process as seamless and as easy as it can possibly be. Before this, you would have to make a giant foil ball that wouldn't seal that well, and you'd waste a bunch of foil and end up not getting the results that you were after. Whereas these plugs, they're offered in a variety of sizes. You guys can see the 1.5-inch one that I have here. It's a little bit worse for wear, as this is one of the frequently used ones here. But they have all the way from small sizes, I believe, all the way up to 6-inch, which is pretty incredible. And this one here, if you guys can see, is a 4.5 to 5-inch purge plug. So I'm going to use this, and I got this brand new with, or I guess specifically to knock out the 5-inch stuff on Dawn's car. So we're going to use this plug, break it in the right way on some lovely titanium, and we'll see just how good of a job that it does. Dawn Supra now has its titanium hood exit exhaust. So I just finished up putting the O2 bung in, and the next order of business for this is to knock out the wastegate dump tube. So I've began on this. If you guys can see down in there, that is the beginning of the dump tube, and it's going to snake underneath of the exhaust and come up right next to the exhaust outlet right here. So I had to do some trickery on the first bend off of the turbine, or the wastegate outlet flange rather. And from here it should be pretty straightforward, I'm hoping. So I'll need to pull what I have already welded off of the wastegate, and I have the next elbow prepped and everything and all ready to be welded to the existing elbow that's on the flange. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully this goes pretty smoothly and pretty straightforward. I will get the next elbow marked out, get it tacked together, and then we can proceed with our lovely wastegate dump tube. All of the titanium tube work on Don's car is completed at this point. And I know I did kind of a crap job of showing the whole build process, but with the whole one-piece front end being up and down and not having a great way to fit the camera in here, we can at least talk about what I've done, and hopefully that will be good enough. So we have the exhaust, which is pretty self-explanatory. Comes from the turbine outlet, snakes its way up, makes its way through the hole in the hood, trying to keep it equidistant from all sides. The wastegate dump tube had its own set of challenges, and as you guys saw, that whole center section that is comprised of a variety of different pieces, that's what was necessary to make kind of all the little jogs and bends and everything to fit this the way that it needed to fit. But if we get in here, we can see that everything fits together nicely. The tubes sit just about at the same angle, and I'm very happy with the way that this has all came together. So we're not quite done with the titanium work yet. We have a couple of little side projects, or little additional projects I should say, that need to be knocked out on these two titanium tube structures. So one of which is mounting the downpipe, or the hood exit exhaust tube I should say. The point of doing that is, as all of the exhaust is blowing out of here, that puts quite a bit of force on the exhaust itself. And since we have an axis that it can pivot on right here, well, we need to secure this so it stays in place and doesn't end up contacting the hood or blowing down and blowing up on the bottom of the hood, as that wouldn't be a good deal. So if you can see in there, I've gone ahead and I've put a riv nut in place, and we will build a simple little mount bracket that goes from the exhaust down to that riv nut, and that will hold the exhaust in place. In addition to that, the wastegate dump tube, if you look here, can move around quite a bit. And similarly to the exhaust, there'll be a lot of force that's put on that tube pushing it downwards. And what I'm going to do is make a tab that ties the exhaust to the wastegate dump tube so it holds both of these in place. I'll feel much better about this whole setup once those two things are knocked out. So let's go ahead and start building them. I'll start with the mount first, as that will be the more complex of the two. And let's see what I can come up with. Don's exhaust mount is completed, and it's time to move on to the linking tab between the dump tube and the exhaust. But first, if we can see down in here, I know it's a little bit dark, but there is the exhaust mount. Works out pretty nicely. And just one M6 bolt down on the sheet metal, and all is well. So now I'm going to go ahead and build the tab that ties everything together. This should be pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I just have to figure out what my distance is between these two and then divide that by 2 plus whatever overlap that I want there to be. I'm going to do this on the back side here, so it's a little bit more hidden as opposed to being right out here on the front side. I think that will be a little bit cleaner and it'll make me a little bit happier. So let's go ahead, get this knocked out, and we'll see where else we go from here. All of the welding that I needed to do on the car is completed at this point in time. So the last bit of it was getting the support heim put in place. And that's all done now. I made that little tab with a nut welded on it. So that way you just have 2 bolts, not dealing with a nut and bolt setup on the bottom there. And I think that will be nice and effective. Up here we have the tie together bracket for the exhaust and the wastegate dump tube. These are much more solid now, and I'm much happier with that. So as you can see, the last big to-do on this car is the hot side intercooler tube. This shouldn't be all that bad to do, not compared to the other work that I've done on this thing so far, and that is what tomorrow's efforts will be focused around. I'll need to figure out a way to get the nose back off of this car, as I still need to put a blow-off valve flange rather, and a couple other little ancillary odds and ends, in the cold side intercooler tube, but I'll focus on that once I get the nose off. I want to keep it on for right now, so I make sure that I don't run into any clearance issues with this hot side intercooler tube. I don't think that I will, but it's better safe than sorry with something like this. We are on to what should be the final day of work on Don's Supra. So the things that we have left to do are all aluminum projects, the largest of which is the hot side intercooler tube. And then we also need to locate the blow-off valve as well as bungs for an IAT sensor and a nitrous setup, which the nitrous line is right here. That should be pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory, and then an IAT bung somewhere in there as well. But we are going to begin with the intercooler tube. And I've already gone ahead and I tacked this concentric cone to the compressor outlet flange. So we're stepping up from 3-inch to 4-inch tubing, and all I have to do is run the tube from here down to here. Should be easy enough. So I'm going to weld the cone to the flange first, get all of that knocked out, and then we can work on the tube structure from there. We can get this hot side tube knocked out, and then it will just be the easy bit of putting a few bungs and a blow-off valve flange in place. Don's hot side intercooler tube is completed. Another sub project knocked off of the list, and we are down to the last few items. But first, here is what the intercooler tube ended up like. And I am not super satisfied with it. The aluminum that we used for this is not very high quality, and it didn't weld the best. It'll still hold together just fine. The car will make passes, will make power and everything, but I am siding with vanity on this one, and I would have been much happier to lay down some higher quality welds. You can see a section like this. The bead became quite erratic, and it was difficult to get it welded, but all the joints are together, and that's, at the end of the day, what we're looking for. So the next, and like I said, last things that we have to do are to locate these three things right here. We have two 8th NPT bungs and a blow-off valve flange. So these will all live on the 5-inch cold side section of all of this. And we have right here the nitrous line. That will go somewhere on the bottom. The IAT will go somewhere in front of that, and then the blow-off valve will be housed somewhere in this area here. So the only thing left to do is to mark out where these three items are going to be located, and then pull the intercooler, drill some holes, and get them put in place. And with that, Don's big tire Supra is now completed. This was a very fun project. I am very happy and feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to take this project on, and I cannot wait to see what they do with it. So a quick overview of what all we accomplished if you guys didn't watch the entire series. We started off with getting the intercooler mounted and getting this cold side intercooler tube made. Once the intercooler and cold side tube assembly was completed, I then moved on to the header. And the header was probably the most complicated portion of all of this, trying to fit this entire assembly into a small space while still leaving room to fit a giant turbo, big exhaust, so on and so forth. But the header is a 321 stainless piece. It has one of my billet head flanges and all stainless bros, 321 stainless materials, stainless headers, collectors, and so on and so forth. Once the header was completed, I then moved on to the exhaust, all Tycon Industries materials, and I used their 5-inch elbows to zigzag my way up through the existing hole in the hood on the one-piece front end of this car. I then moved on to the Wastegate dump tube, which that was probably even more so than the header, the most challenging portion of all of this. Trying to fit a 2.5-inch tube in a space that just barely had 2.5 inches to play with, but I made it work and everything is good. I'm very happy with it. Then mounted the downpipe, or the hood exit rather, built a linking tab between the dump tube and the exhaust, built this turbo support bracket right here, and then we rounded everything off with the hot side intercooler tube, which you guys obviously saw earlier in this video. So I could not be happier with the way that this car came out. The setup looks absolutely menacing, and it's going to go very, very fast. Like I said, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend World Cup this year to see it run in person, but I'll be there in spirit, and I'm sure that I will see or receive updates about it, and I can't wait to see what they do with this car. So now comes the list of thank yous, and the people that provided me the opportunity to take this project on, from the bottom of my heart, I can't say how thankful I am for it. So first off, Don of Accelerated Performance. Without him, this car wouldn't exist, and without the friendship that we have built over many years, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to knock all of this out. So Don, thank you very much, and it's now on you to go real fast with this thing, and can't wait to see what you do with it. Next, we have the crew at Stainless Bros and Tycon Industries for providing all of the materials to build this crazy hot side setup. Again, without them, this wouldn't have been possible, and I would have taken much longer if it weren't for their beautiful surface finishes, high quality materials, and being just awesome, awesome people. So Justin, Keen, the whole rest of the crew at Stainless Bros and Tycon, thank you guys very much for making this possible, for allowing me to live my dreams of building parts for wild cars like this. We also have my good buddy Brad at TIG Aesthetics for providing all of the back purging plugs and purging materials that I use throughout the course of this build. Without him, I would have still been using aluminum foil and not getting a good purge, not getting as strong of welds as I possibly could. And for a setup this crazy, it is very important to have everything be structurally sound. So with all of that being said, let's just take another gander at this thing, and pretty much from any angle that you look at it, it just looks crazy and menacing, and it makes me really excited to see how fast they can go with it. My friend Nick Leonard is the pilot of this car, and he's a much crazier man than I am to just hop into a big tire, big power beast like this. But hopefully I provided a good setup for them to set new personal bests, hopefully go rounds at World Cup, and maybe even bring home a cup at the end of it. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And I guess at this point, this is the Monday before World Cup, so make sure this weekend that through Flow Racing or whoever is doing the live stream there, or through 1320 video, or if you are going to go to the track and see the madness that is World Cup in person yourself, be on the lookout for this car, and let's all hope that they do something really cool with it, and I can't wait to see what the results are. So with all of that being said, and another project in the books, I think that is about the end of this video and of this series. So once again, can't wait to see what they do with this thing, and I'm just very thankful to have had the opportunity to build this crazy setup for this car. With all of that being said, that'll be about the end of this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Check out the website for manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way, including my 15th anniversary t-shirts and hoodies. Those are still available through the end of 2024. So if you want a piece of BPA history for your collection, that's a good way to get it. If not, then hopefully I offer something in the future that does speak to you and that you would like to add to your collection. But with all that being said, and like I said, another wild project in the books, that'll be the end of this one, and I will see you guys in the next episode.